He knew they were outgunned, but he didn't turn back. One destroyer against an entire fleet. This isn't fiction. This is the true story of the USS Johnston and the captain who chose death over retreat. If this story moved you, if you believe in remembering the brave, the lost, and the forgotten, please subscribe to Good Old Days. Every day, we bring the past to life, one story at a time. They say the sea has no memory, but those who were there will never forget what happened on the morning of October, WWII 1944, when the Pacific Ocean east of Samar erupted into a symphony of steel, fire, and the impossible courage of men who were never meant to be. Remembered by history, but were, because they chose to fight anyway. At the break of dawn, as the horizon split open with the golden hues of sunrise, the USS Johnston, DD 557, a Fletcher-class destroyer no longer than a city block, surged forward through the gentle swells of the Philippine Sea, her gray hull cutting a clean path through waters that would soon turn red. On her deck stood men barely out of boyhood, the salty wind biting at their faces, the sky still whispering peace even as radar pings began to tell a different story. Shadows on the screen, ghosts coming fast, large, and far too many. Task Unit 77.4.3, known by the codename Taffy 3, was not a fighting group. It was an escort formation, jeep carriers, slow-moving and lightly armed, accompanied only by a few destroyers and destroyer escorts. Their job was to provide air support to the soldiers. Storming the beaches of Leyte, they had no expectation of a surface battle, and certainly not one against the most powerful ships of the Imperial Japanese Navy. But war does not care about fairness. As the fog lifted and the silhouette solidified, it became clear that Admiral Kurita's center force had broken through San Bernardino Strait. Battleships, cruisers, and destroyers, 23 warships in all, now bore down on Taffy 3, among them the Yamato, the largest and most heavily armed battleship ever built. A steel leviathan with guns that could fire 18-inch shells over 25 miles. Against such overwhelming firepower, the small American group had no chance. But Commander Ernest Evans of the USS Johnston did not wait for orders. He did not hesitate. He simply turned to his crew and said, "We're going in," and ordered flank speed. What followed defied logic, training, even the very physics of war. The Johnston surged ahead, alone at first, steaming straight into the firestorm, her 5-inch guns blazing, torpedoes slashing through the sea toward the oncoming giants. Within minutes, she was hit. A shell struck the bridge, wounding Evans and disabling much of the command center. But he stayed standing, blood streaming from his wounds, barking orders, his voice defiant even as chaos reigned around him. The destroyer twisted and turned through the hailstorm of shells, evading, striking, firing at point-blank range at ships 10 times her size. At one point, the Johnston broke through smoke and came within range of the cruiser Kumano. She launched a spread of torpedoes, one hit. The enemy ship reeled, her bow mangled, retreating from a vessel it should have destroyed in seconds. The Japanese were confused. They thought they were facing a larger force. The ferocity of the Johnston's charge, followed quickly by the destroyers Hole, Heerman, and the escort Samuel B. Roberts, shattered their momentum. Under the onslaught of suicidal American bravery, Admiral Kurita hesitated. He ordered his cruisers to regroup. Time passed. Confusion reigned. That time was everything. It allowed the escort carriers to retreat. It allowed pilots to rearm and return. It turned chaos into resistance. But for the Johnston, time ran out. Her ammunition nearly gone. Her engines failing. Fires below deck, her radar blind. The destroyer continued to fight. One by one, her guns fell silent. At 9:45 a.m., after more than 2 hours of relentless fighting, she slowed, listing to port, smoke trailing in great columns toward the heavens. Commander Evans, wounded again and again, was last seen on the fantail, giving orders with what voice he had left. Moments later, the Johnston rolled over and began to sink. Of her crew of 327, only 141 survived the sea, clinging to life on makeshift rafts in shark-infested waters, watching the wreckage of their ship disappear beneath the waves. But the story does not end there, because that charge, that unthinkable stand against impossible odds, had stopped the Japanese advance. Kurita, still believing he was facing a full American fleet, turned his ships around and retreated. The invasion of Leyte was saved. The turning point in the Pacific held. And the USS Johnston, a destroyer meant to escort, not to lead, became immortal. Decades later, in 2021, explorers found her wreck. Nearly 4 miles beneath the ocean, she lay upright on the seafloor, her hull still intact. Her gun turret still facing forward, as if she were still aiming at giants. The number 557 was still visible on her bow, silent but unbroken. And that is the legacy of USS Johnston. Not steel, not firepower, but the will of men who refused to run, who chose to die standing, guns hot, hearts full. When courage faced giants and courage won.